Psalm 23, as interpreted by Etti Ankri. Eli Eli, al tazveini v'choshech levadi, gam ki elech begeit salmavet, lo ira, ki ata imadi. Shiftecha u'mishantecha hema yenachamuni, taroch lefanai shulchan neged sorerai, ach tov v'chesed yirlefuni kol yemei chayai. Mizmor leDavid, Hashem roi lo echsar. Mizmor leDavid, Hashem roi lo echsar. Birot Hashem yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yanachaleni, nafshi yeshovev yancheni v'maglei tzedek lema'an shemo. Over to you, Charles, and would you like to take my place? Bruchim Tihu.
Wow. Thank you all so very much for coming to be with us this evening. It really is very touching, and particular thanks to the people on the East Coast. Hi guys, thank you for staying up late to be with us tonight. I need just a minute to get the Zoom to share screen, so give me a moment. Again, thank you all for being here to hear about the life of my father, Ivan Kaplan Yitzhak ben Yaakov HaKohen Fefega. Ivan was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1928. His family lost everything in the Great Depression, and Ivan grew up with not enough, painfully aware of his parents' economic struggles. And he decided at a very tender age that this would not be his fate in life. This decision formed the core of his entire life. More on that soon. Family and close friends were very important to Ivan. Here he is with his younger brother, my beloved Uncle Bob of blessed memory. Ivan and Bobby were very, very close growing up. They became business partners, and they remained close for the rest of their lives. I have so many photos of Bobby and Ivan arm in arm, head to head. It's how I always remember them. Here we have Bobby and Ivan with my not biological Uncle Donnie, Ivan's friend from high school. But you know what? Arthur, here on the left, wins the prize as Ivan's longest relationship. They met stroller to stroller, and they remained close for 94 years. Art spoke eloquently at Ivan's funeral. For my fellow geography geeks, here's an aerial photo of Ivan's childhood neighborhood, taken in 1930. In the foreground, you'll notice the University of Pittsburgh's iconic Cathedral of Learning. And for sports fans, you see Pitt Stadium and Forbes Field. Go Pirates! In the distance, you see two of Pittsburgh's three rivers and the downtown core. And in between all of that, in between here and here, this area is where Ivan grew up. Oakland is spread out on a bluff overlooking the Monongahela River where all the steel mills were. And Ivan's family home was on the very edge of that bluff, just off the photo that you see here. Trust me, be glad that you can't smell the sulfur from those steel mills. It must have been pretty hard to live up on that bluff. Now, the spot that I circled in red here, it's kind of tiny, but the spot in red is across the street from Magee Women's Hospital, where Ivan was born, I was born, and if I'm not mistaken, Rabbi Infeld was also born there. That red circle forms part of the backdrop of Ivan's greatest story. We'll start at Pitt Stadium. We'll start at Pitt Stadium. At age 10, Ivan became an entrepreneur. He started selling buttons and pennant flags at Pitt Stadium during the football games. By the time he was 12, he realized that his profit margin would be higher if he bought his merchandise directly from the manufacturer. I am not making this up. Soon, he was employing his brother and a small army of friends, and they were all making big money for themselves and their families. Now, the epilogue for the story takes place at the circled area that I described, which happens to be Ivan's old synagogue. If you look really closely, you'll see the name of the synagogue is Tree of Life. Yes, that Tree of Life. The photo was taken just a few years before Tree of Life moved to its current location in Squirrel Hill. Ivan had his bar mitzvah at Tree of Life in 1941. The rabbi was Rabbi Halperin, who held the pulpit there from 1922 to 1968. That's 46 years, rabbis, if you're counting. Rabbi Halperin reportedly told Ivan that he'd need to start coming for bar mitzvah lessons on Sundays. And Ivan said, I can't. I have a business to run on Sundays. Of course, the rabbi was completely unmoved by this until Ivan said, but Rabbi, I'll make $50 at Pitt Stadium, and so will all of my friends. Now, guys, I checked. $50 in 1941 would be about $1,000 today. That is big money for a 12-year-old coming from a family that doesn't have enough. As the family legend goes, Rabbi Halperin said, Ivan, we're going to find another day for your bar mitzvah lessons. Well, this is a good place, I think, to say something about Ivan's Jewish identity. Like many of his era, he wanted no part of the old world ways of his parents and grandparents. He quit attending cheder as soon as he could, and he was never into the traditional ways of being a Jew, despite the photograph of him lighting the Chanukiah here. It's the only one I've ever seen of him doing something Jewish. Well, not true, you'll see. Even so, Ivan was deeply, deeply culturally Jewish. His friends and his business associates were all Jews. He and my mother joined and supported a synagogue, and they made sure that their 4 sons had their bar mitzvahs there. Mom and Dad had some of their earliest vacations at Borscht Belt hotels in the Catskills. And Ivan became a supporter of Israel and other Jewish causes. He even made the treks to Vancouver along with Uncle Bobby for Hillary and Eli's B'nai Mitzvah celebrations. Recently, when I was sharing Ivan's stories with my brothers, David, you get credit for this, I learned that Ivan Shpilkes got the better of him during Or Shalom's 2.5-hour Shabbat morning service. And he kept looking at his watch and wondering when it would be time for Kiddush lunch. So very Ivan. Ivan briefly attended the University of Pittsburgh before deciding that he'd rather make money. He did meet my mom there, though, and they got married very young. Ivan was just 23 when I was born, and Rick came along 2 years later, followed by David and Lee, and then suddenly it was 20 years later, and they had 4 young men. Unfortunately, my parents' marriage did not survive. Both of them were determined and very strong-willed people, and they clashed, finally divorcing a few years after this photo was taken. Ivan married twice more. Propriety and good manners requires me to say little about that, except for one really great thing. We got another brother. Ivan's stepson, Jason, seen here at the top of the bro pile. Jason's about 20 years younger than me. Ivan loved having 5 sons. And we were always trying to get all of us into the picture at the same time, but it was hard. One or the other of us would often not be there. This series of slides that I'll go through quickly here were taken when Ivan was 70, and then 80, and then 90. Sometimes we tried to get group photos of the entire Kaplan clan, but it got to the point where we could not really fit in the frame very well. Now, this slide is worth a comment. It's very recent, as you can see by checking out Ivan. This was at my Uncle Bob's birthday party just a few months before he died. And it shows the newest generation of young adult Kaplans. The big guy that you see down there with the beard, he was one of the little kids. Whoop, in that picture. And the little girl is his daughter, Ivan's great-granddaughter. Ivan did like to travel, and he enjoyed bringing his extended family together for special trips like this, visit to Disney World. When I was in college, he came to a party at my apartment. I'd forgotten all about that, really, until a few weeks ago when an old college friend responding to my Facebook post about my father's death sent me this photo and remembered being shocked that my father would be okay coming to a party with a bunch of hippies. But here's the proof. Clearly he was into it, and knowing Ivan as I do, he probably partook of whatever was being passed around. Then there was the infamous sailing trip in the Florida Keys. This was in 1980 something. I haven't been able to remember the exact date. We chartered a 42-foot yacht, and Ivan and 4 of his 5 boys spent a week on the low seas. It was just off the coast of Florida, around the coral reefs. Jason was a little kid at the time and didn't come, so it was just Ivan and his 4 biological sons. We had a good time. The cruising was not without issues, however. Ivan's condition for coming along was that he was not going to miss the Steelers game. So he brought a battery-powered TV and insisted that we spend game day close enough to shore to pick up a signal. And rather than fully embrace the adventure of cruising, he spent much of his time on board catching up on business news. So very Ivan. Now, the photo on the right, I promise you, was not staged, but it captures an important dynamic in my relationship with him. If you can't see it, the cereal box says life, and the back of my t-shirt says the Clash. In a Kabbalistic personality analysis, Ivan was all about gevura, judgment. His judgment could be swift and terrible, and very obvious even when he didn't verbalize it, which he usually did. Ivan knew with certainty what was good for you, and he simply could not understand when you didn't see things his way. Of course, often what he knew was good for you was making big money. Of me, he used to say, Charles doesn't care about money, only the lack of it. Now, Ivan and I ultimately found the connection that we both really wanted in my profession of child psychology. He became intrigued by what he saw as my salesmanship skills in persuading reluctant clients to accept the wisdom of my analysis and recommendations. And we would have many deeply satisfying conversations about our own family's dynamics. And I really, truly felt his respect and his admiration for my professional skills and knowledge. Unfortunately, those conversations always tended to end in the same frustrating way, with Ivan wondering out loud how I could transform my clinical practice into a franchisable business worth $1 bazillion while others did the clinical work that I loved, while I ran the business, which I didn't love. Not gonna happen. And I would feel his judgment about that. And in this picture, I think I remember the situation. He was saying to me, I just don't get it. But it's your life, Gegenunterheit. Even if I didn't share Ivan's entrepreneurial streak, I did take in other life lessons from him. Most importantly, that you have to work hard for what you want and be both personally and fiscally responsible in doing it. Ivan wanted us all to be go-getters, so he was very clear about not making life too easy, especially if something we wanted didn't fit with his worldview. All of us have stories about this. When I was in high school and I wanted to join a band, Ivan declined to buy me a keyboard and an amplifier, telling me instead, get a job. So I did. I worked at the Wiener World. As many shifts as I could get, in the grody kitchen where I sliced pickles and diced onions and washed endless dishes. I didn't spend a penny of my earnings except on bus fare until I had the keyboard and joined the band. It was a sweet accomplishment for me, and I'm pretty sure that Ivan was pleased too, except for all the noise that resulted. Another important thread in my relationship with Ivan is my family of choice. Here's Ivan at our wedding, clearly having the time of his life. The photographer really captured this amazing moment. Ivan was very happy to see me with a Jewish woman. And he was warm and welcoming to Laura. And as he got to know her, he was really taken by her drive and her professional success. When we moved to Vancouver, Ivan thought it was a gutsy move, for Laura especially, to upend her successful academic career in philosophy and start all over again as a rabbi. And then came Hillary and Eli. Ivan came to see his grandchildren in Charlotte. And we would go to see him at his home in Florida. But you know, Ivan was never really great with children. And the onus for connecting Hillary and Eli with Grandpa Ivan was on me. And despite the lovely photos, I really have to admit that my efforts in that area could have been greater, and truly I regret that very much. Ivan had other grandchildren as well, from my youngest brother Lee. Two of them are seen here with Hillary and Eli. The third grandchild in this family, I could not find a photo of her. I am sorry, Chrissy. But Michelle was a third granddaughter in Lee's family. And then there's a great-granddaughter, Emma Faye. So here we have a little retrospective of Ivan through his 80s. I really carefully looked at these pictures and dated them, put them in order, and you can really see the vibrance in 2009, that by 2019, I'm already seeing, knowing what's coming, the beginnings of that vacant look that comes with dementia. When we started to lose Ivan to dementia, not long after his 90th birthday, Hillary and Eli treated their grandpa Ivan with a level of chesed v'rachamim that made me very, very proud of them. That picture on the left really shows how he looked often. It was so awful. There's really not a lot I want to say about his last 5 years. If you've lost a loved one to dementia, you'll understand. It's a very cruel disease. Ivan was adamant about wanting to age in place, and when he became too feeble mentally and physically to do so, we arranged for him to be cared for in his home. Raquel and Pilar came to love Ivan like his own children, and he loved them as well. Raquel, an Orthodox Sephardic Jew, even tried her best to infuse Ivan with Yiddishkeit. None of us were surprised when she failed, but she tried. I love this photo of Ivan being fitted with tefillin by a young Chabadnik. To be honest, it would not be Ivan's thing to be remembered at a religious service, but I know he would be so pleased to see friends and acquaintances, and especially family, coming together in community. So thank you all again for being here with us, especially those on the East Coast for whom I know it's quite late. Good night to you all. We'll talk later. And local friends, let's schmooze.